Hello. Hello. Sorry, that was kind of loud. I'm really excited that all of you are here today to discuss what Lafayette can do to fulfill the goals of this initiative. And I just want to start by telling you that my name is Jeremy Connor, and I'm a cook. And I've never really set out to start a business that made food for wholesale. I was always in the kitchen preparing food in restaurants. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how I sort of made that switch. I am from Pensacola, Florida, or not here, as you can probably tell from my accent. I began cooking professionally over 20 years ago. I count McDonald's when I was 15, so that's 23, 24 years ago, something like that. And after that, I started cooking in restaurants in Pensacola and on Pensacola Beach, high volume restaurants, fine dining restaurants. Then about 9 years ago, I moved to Lafayette, and I happened to land in Great Coteau, and so I started working at Cataboulas in Great Coteau. I worked there for about a year, and then I moved into town, and I worked at a restaurant that was called Village Cafe. And Village Cafe was sort of a special experience for me. I wasn't the head chef when I started, but about a year later, 2 years later, I was the head chef, and so I had a certain amount of creative freedom there in my role because I was the head chef, but also I was sort of afforded the opportunity to make that restaurant one that we could basically cook whatever we wanted to. And so I set out to sort of define my own cuisine. And so we ended up using a lot of local ingredients. I put hundreds of thousands of miles on my truck driving all around Louisiana and discovering farmers and ingredients and fishermen and oystermen and all kinds of stuff like that, which was fascinating. And of course we also used ingredients from all over the world. And so during that time we were using lots of things, but specifically we had salt. We had salt from all over the world. We had salt from Brittany and France. We had salt from Japan, from Hawaii, from everywhere. These salts all have their particular characteristics. And most of those specialty type salts are used as finishing salts, which I'll get into in just a minute. But I wondered why no one was making salt from the Gulf of Mexico. So I had grown up in Pensacola, swimming in the Gulf, fishing, trying to surf. Those kinds of things, and even at that point, before I was cooking professionally, you know what the Gulf tastes like when you swim in the Gulf. And so, it occurred to me, sort of toward the end of my tenure at Village Cafe, that I wanted to make a salt from the Gulf of Mexico because it tasted fantastic and it didn't taste like anything that I was able to get from anywhere else. And so, a little over 2 years ago, my wife and I decided to start Cellar Salt Company. And we named it Cellar Salt Company because as we started the company, we lived in a house on St. Mary that had a cellar. And we didn't know if we'd actually be able to make the salt in the cellar, but we thought that that was extremely interesting for a house in Louisiana to have a cellar. I've since heard that there are several others around town, but not very many. So we started boiling water. I still have family in Pensacola, and so we would go to Pensacola and get water and bring it back. And actually, you can see here, this is us collecting water in the Gulf, on the beach, in buckets that we would put in the back of my truck and drive back. And we've since expanded that process, so we have tanks and pumps and hoses and trailers and things like that. So the first step in our process is to boil the water. We have to get the water out of the water, so to speak. So we boil and boil and boil until 90% or so of the water has been evaporated. And at that point, the salt is about to precipitate or crystallize in the water. And so we move from pots. This is actually a glass pot. That's why you can see the flame underneath. We did that originally so that high concentration of salt didn't corrode the metal in our stainless steel pots, which it will do. It will corrode stainless steel at that concentration. But so after we boil the water and it's about ready to crystallize, we move it to these sort of shallow tanks, and the salt begins to crystallize on the surface. So we're keeping the water just warm enough to very, very slowly evaporate at this point. And the salt crystallizes on the surface. And this is our goal, is to make these flake-shaped crystals that form across the surface of the water as opposed to into the water in a cube shape. And the reason we do that is because we wanted to make a finishing salt. You know, we didn't want to, we knew we weren't going to start making salt from the Gulf of Mexico and compete with Morton, you know. And so we wanted to make essentially a boutique product, one that was unique and had the flavor of the Gulf of Mexico. No one's going to buy our tiny little salt company's salt unless it's unique and special. And so we wanted to make a finishing salt that you could use. What that means is basically anytime that you would add salt to something at the table or last minute to a dish, that's what a finishing salt is. So when you use this salt or another finishing salt, what you're doing is you're adding salt to the dish, but you're also adding texture. Those flakes are very thin and crispy is the word, and so you get an interesting texture component to the dish that you're using on as well as just salt. Also, if you can see, so this is the tank that you see in the previous slide. With most of the water gone, you can see there's still a little bit of water in there, but most of the salt is crystallized. And at that point, we simply scoop those crystals out and put them in a dehydrator and dry them with whatever water was stuck to those crystals on the outside of them still there. So we don't rinse them or do anything else, we just dry them. So what that does is it takes that last little bit of actual Gulf water that was clinging to those crystals and it dries it down on the crystal itself. So you have pure sodium chloride in the crystal itself with a very, very small amount of Gulf seawater with its entire mineral profile still intact on the surface of the crystal. So you get the actual flavor of the Gulf of Mexico when you're using the salt, just like you would from anywhere else in the world, unless the salt maker rinses those crystals, except it's from the Gulf. So we arrived at this packaging and that product, and you know, kept our branding kind of clean and neat, and we wanted really the Gulf of Mexico to be the product. And so then we decided, well, like, what can we make? We're going to make the regular sea salt, it's a finishing salt, but we can also make flavored sea salts, and we can make salts from this tiny little place in the Gulf, or this bay, or this oyster bed. And so we decided that in those decisions, we always wanted to make the product that we were making, whether it be, you know, the flagship product or a specialty product, you know, flavored salt or something like that. We always wanted it to come back to Louisiana, branding-wise. Incidentally, we get water from Pensacola, and we also get water from near Grand Isle. We get water from Pensacola because it's very, very consistent in terms of cleanliness and saltiness. In Louisiana, even at Grand Isle, sometimes you go to get water and there's very, very little salt in the water because of rainfall or the river dumping or a combination of the two. But when the water is right in Louisiana, we get the best results from near Grand Isle. And so in terms of keeping the products of Louisiana, we wanted to make flavored salt, so we decided to make a smoked salt. So we made smoked salt using pecan wood, Louisiana pecan wood, to smoke the salt. And we made a lemon salt with Louisiana Mare lemons. And we made several others. One that we're most proud of, that's actually the best salt that we make, is due to a collaboration with this gentleman. His name's Marcos Guerrero, and he's an oyster farmer in Caminata Bay. So that's the bay just inside Grand Isle. And basically what we do is we take him buckets, and he takes them out on his boat and fills them with water from his oyster beds, brings them back on shore. We pick them up from him in Baton Rouge, and we make a salt product that is literally a Louisiana oyster bed salt. And the flavor difference is incredible. The oysters actually filter, each oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. And they use a lot of the minerals that are in that water to make their shells. So the oysters are removing a lot of the calcium and magnesium and some of the other minerals from the water and leaving just the sodium. So it's a very, very clean product, and having those minerals out of the way in the crystallization process also makes just impeccably beautiful crystals. So these are some of our products. You have the flagship, just Gulf of Mexico salt on the left. The silver label is the oyster bed salt. The smoked salt is the brown jar. The lemon is all the way on the right, and then the brown label is another sort of effort to keep things Louisiana and Lafayette specific, and that's a coffee salt, coffee flavored salt made with very, very concentrated espresso from Rev Coffee Roasters, so Lafayette Coffee Roaster. So that was definitely something that we wanted to do from the beginning, because there again we knew that salt is an established market, and we weren't going to penetrate with something that wasn't unique and special. You know, starting a food company is difficult. You have to abide by lots of regulation that is not very easy to understand. There's universal sanitary code that just about anyone will refer you to, that's pages and pages long of not so easy to parse language, and it makes things difficult. In addition, we had another challenge that we anticipated, that was how to convince people that there wasn't oil in the salt. And you all giggle and nod your heads, and yeah, I can see how people would be concerned about that. Well, we did, you know, we made salt and we sent it off to be tested, and we got beautiful results, which is just as much a part of our salt making process as it is the cleanliness of the Gulf. But we also knew from the beginning that if NOAA and the other regulatory bodies are sort of allowing oysters to be harvested from Gulf waters, that we were going to be just fine, because like I said, those oysters are filtering that water, and if there's oil and petrochemicals and dispersants in the water, then it's going to be in the oysters. So we knew that clean oysters meant clean water and clean salt. As it turned out, you know, we would do social media posts, marketing posts, and we ended up noticing that it was really rare to see someone ask, or even ask, if there was oil in the salt. You know, we don't encounter a lot of people that ask us about that, and I'm sure some of that may be they don't want to ask the guy that's making the salt if there's oil in the salt, but by and large, people were not nearly as concerned as we anticipated that they might be. Overcoming the sort of regulatory challenges of opening a food business was somewhat easy for me, because, like I said, I'm a chef. I've seen about 4 health inspections in my restaurant kitchen every year for, like I said, 20 years. I know what inspectors and regulators are looking for in terms of food safety, cleanliness, personal safety, just about all of those issues. I'm familiar, if not informed, effect of the Universal Sanitary Code, and I know what those guys are looking for, and I know how to make sure that my products are safe. Other people don't necessarily know that. People that grew up on rice and gravy and maybe want to make a food product may have a really difficult time becoming accustomed to the regulation that's required to open a food business. So when we started making salt, we opened our business, so to speak, by making the salt at home in our home kitchen and selling under cottage food law, which is another difficult thing to understand for a lot of people that want to start a food business. And then we also sold at the Lafayette Farmers and Artisans Market at the Horse Farm, which is a fantastic farmers market and absolutely beautiful setting, and great participation. But we knew that for us to make it worth our while to boil all this water, and quite frankly, just to go get the water itself, we needed to increase the scale. And so what we did was, another advantage that I had was I had a lot of chef friends, And so I talked to a buddy of mine, and he allowed me to use his restaurant kitchen after hours and on days that he was closed. And I became licensed through the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals Food and Drug Unit as a wholesale food manufacturer using his restaurant kitchen. And so that is the sort of long and difficult step that you have to take to get from I want to make food and sell it, I'll use cottage food law, to I want to see my product on store shelves. So the farmer's market, that farmer's market in particular, the one at the horse farm, is actually a festival in the state of Louisiana and in Lafayette. It's designated a festival. And so the retail unit of the Department of Health and Hospitals, the food inspectors for that body, have what they call an unfunded mandate to inspect food at festivals. So they're not going to go to the festival and make sure that everyone has all of the things that you have in a restaurant to make sure that the food is safe to eat. And so what that meant was that you can make essentially whatever. It's fair game. You can make whatever you want to at your house and sell it at that farmer's market. So that right there is a really important sort of first step for someone that wants to start a food business. And then another one, I'm going to point to him in the back. There's a gentleman here, his name is Zach McMath, and he has Acadiana Food Hub off University on the north side. And what that means is that Zach offers for rent commissary kitchen space. And so that allows someone that wants to start a food business to rent time in a kitchen that is inspected and licensed so that they can manufacture foods and sell them legally wholesale on grocery store shelves. So that's that big step between I'm going to sell under cottage food law out of my house to I can actually, you need to be able to sell to more people than you can have in front of you and make a hand-to-hand transaction. So that's what Zach does there, offers people a great opportunity. Through the GREAT initiative, I think that some of the things that Lafayette can accomplish to help people, sort of see these visions that they have of making food and selling it come to fruition are to offer food startups a sort of advocate or incubator, if you will, and have a sort of place that they can go to obtain the information that they probably will not be familiar with, that they need to pass regulation and become a licensed food manufacturer. Another thing that I think Lafayette can do is I'm sure that Create will have social media channels, and I think as those sort of channels go on and there's daily posts on there, I'd like to see some of the food manufacturers and quite frankly artists and musicians and everyone else sort of have the opportunity to speak through those channels, Instagram takeovers and things like that. And then finally, I think that the initiative's existence in and of itself is a driving force, because if people that are considering opening a food manufacturing operation or any other sort of creative endeavor see that the city, parish, and local government is behind it and investing money and doing things to help them, then you'll see more private investment in those fields. That's all I have. I hope that it's something that you'd be interested in. And I'd definitely be willing to take any questions that you have about what we do. Yes? Locally? The question was, where are my products sold locally? So currently we sell at the Culinary, Tribe Collective, Gentry Supply, Rev Coffee Roasters, both locations, downtown and in River Ranch. we're on the shelves at Bread and Circus Provisions, and I might be missing one other. I think there's 6 in town. And then we also sell at a couple of places in New Orleans and some in Pensacola, Florida as well.
So here's a question right here.
It's actually more of a shameless plug as we talk about the storytelling. I just wanted to reference and thank Jeremy. Both of these stories that we're learning about today have been a part of our content and our marketing. Both Merlene, in terms of a piece we put out called the Plate Lunch Experience, that we actually turned into an ad campaign that has run in ads all across the country and is spearheaded by Jesse Guidry in our office. And then Jeremy actually wrote a great piece on Gulf Seafood, which includes a great story about this. So I encourage you to go find those stories at LaffeyandTravel.com and help us to continue to spread the word.
Thanks, Ben.
Any more questions or comments?
Yes, sir.
So as a starting food startup, you mentioned just a brief amount of the conversation about branding and things like that. What challenges have you found you had to overcome to start making your product feel not like a home product anymore, but an actual something that people are willing to buy and trust that is a real food brand?
So, one thing that we did was we made an effort to get out of our own heads and sort of like go to the grocery store and look at branding on the shelves. And we made a point to walk around not only the food aisles, but other aisles as well. So try to take a look at fonts, logos, in-cap design in the grocery store merchandising, all those sorts of things. And through lots of iterations, we ended up with the logo and label design that we have. And we feel it speaks to simplicity and essentially getting away from typical food product labels, and almost like we feel like it almost has like a cosmetic kind of product look, look at that. We also wanted to emphasize the handcrafted aspect. It's not made by adding chemicals to seawater brine and dropping the sodium chloride out and then refining it further and packaging it for a few cents a pound, like salt. It's handcrafted, it's labor intensive, it's loved, and the result is a product that it's not salt, it's something else. You know what I mean? It's like I said, the product is the Gulf of Mexico itself, and so we do things like each of the product gets its own sort of new. We look at it in a new way and try to say, well, we want to keep it along these lines. We want it to be recognizable on brand, but we also want it to be something unique. So brown glass with the white lid and the different color labels and things like that.
Jeremy, if someone interested in purchasing some of your salt, where can you locate the salt?
So I'll say the places locally again. We have Gentry Supply, we have Rev Coffee Roasters, both locations, Bread and Circus Provisions, Tribe Collective, Culinary. I'm not thinking of any more in Lafayette today, but yes. And as I mentioned earlier, we have some in 2 places in New Orleans and 1 in Pensacola as well. And we also have an online store, and the address is cellarsalt.co.
Any more comments or questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll have great. To you guys.
Are you looking at putting it in any restaurants, like on the restaurant table, so more people can see that visually?
We have had some restaurants approach us about that sort of usage in restaurants. We do sell to restaurants. We also do a 1 pound sort of bulk chef pack, we call it. And so we sell it to restaurants and they use it to finish specific dishes on the menu. It might be cost prohibitive to offer on the table for every table on sort of a complimentary basis. It would need to be a sort of high-end restaurant where that was worked into the price of their dishes and things like that. Although those restaurants do exist, so yeah.
Right here.
Yes.
What would do you do with the coffee salt?
The coffee salt is actually really, really good on green vegetables, sauteed green vegetables, or even steamed green vegetables. It has, that coffee aroma. The aroma is really the strongest aspect of it, but it also has some of the coffee bitterness, and that subtle bitterness really plays nicely with the green vegetable flavors. It's also really good on chocolate chip cookies.
So do you have recipes posted on your website?
We do not have any recipes right now. I'll actually tell you, so over the past month and a half to 2 months, I've been very busy. And what I've been doing is being a glutton for punishment, I guess, in that I no longer make this salt in that restaurant. And actually this morning, before I came here, I got my final inspection on a salt facility of my own. And so we're going to be busy bringing our inventory back up to par, and after that we plan a website revision with blog posts including recipes.
How many employees do you have?
0. My wife and I are the only people working on this.
No profit.
No, that's right, and that's great. But we didn't start this business to break our backs making salt. We want at one day to provide jobs for people in a food company. It's something that we're very, very passionate about, and people ask us about all the time. And you tell people you make salt, and they're just intrigued. And so we can see a future not so far off where we have some passionate people working for us to move it forward.
Questions? Comments?
You were talking about branding. As a consumer and a visual artist, you hit the mark on your simplicity, because salt is simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
So your whole logo and the jar makes me, salt is simple, and you have a simple visual. So as a consumer, you really hit the mark.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we like I said, we looked at a lot of other food products as well to determine our branding. And one thing that Louisiana may not need too many more of is spice companies. That is certainly what I would call a saturated market.
Yeah.
And so, and still some people hear that I make salt and they're like, well, if I'm going to add it to my sauce, how much should I use as opposed to regular salt? And so then you have to kind of go through the explanation of, well, you can certainly do that, and the flavor will be better than if you had added, iodized salt to your recipe, but you may not be using it in a cost-effective manner. And it's actually, you'll see more of the qualities of what I'm doing if you use it in this way, And so we definitely wanted to convey some of that with the branding as well. So thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.